Hi, I'm Rick Bennett, host of Gospel Tangents. I need your help. Please donate on our website, gospeltangents.com, and click on the donate button. It can be a one-time donation or a recurring donation. Your donation will help us to create better resources to learn more about Mormon history. So far it's been a labor of love, but I really need some help getting better equipment, better sound, that sort of thing. So please either commit to a recurring donation or a one-time donation. We'll take any help we can get. Thank you for your help. If you've listened to my interviews on the Book of Mormon, I've asked a few people, like Jim Van Cannon and David Rosenvall, about the Lemba Tribe in Africa. They're a tribe that has Middle Eastern DNA, unlike Native Americans who don't. I asked Dr. Ugo Perego about this tribe, and we'll get a good introduction into the Lemba Tribe. We'll also talk a little bit about Viking DNA. Can that be distinguished from Columbus DNA? Check out our conversation. The Lemba Tribe. Have you heard of the Lemba Tribe?
Yes, absolutely. The Kohen haplotype.
Okay, so for those who are not familiar with the Lemba Tribe, tell us about it.
Well, Lemba Tribe is an African tribe that traditionally they claim to have Jewish ancestry, but physically they're Africans, right? And they did this DNA study. This was done several years ago. Actually, things have changed a little bit since then. But the original thing that made a huge impact and people still remember is the fact that Jewish researchers identify a marker among Jewish family called the Kohen haplotype, C-O-H-E-N. Kohen means the priestly class, is a surname which is linked back to the time of Levi or Aaron's brother of Moses, and that would be the priestly class that was found among the different Israelite tribes, all right? So this first research says we identified these markers. It's very dominant among the Kohen families, which traditionally are the priestly family. They have the markers. The other family don't have it as much as they do. Do all the Kohen people have the marker? No. Do people that are not Kohen have the marker? Yes. But the majority of the Kohens have it, right? And so they link it to them. It's never 100% thing. It's never all or none, right? They have it. So we link it to Jewish family, we link it to the priestly class, and now the Lemba tribe says, well, we are part of the Jewish family too, and they find the Kohen haplotype among them as well, right? So you think like genetically it makes all sense.
Yeah, so I mean, the story that I remember is it seemed to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to me they kind of had a similar story as the Book of Mormon people. They both left Jerusalem about the same time.
Yes.
So, 600 BC. In the case of the Lemba tribe, they traveled through and ended up in southern Africa, married with the local population, and they have this
marker that is and that is one is the simple story, right? There are other things that could happen. One of them is that Jews accept converts. You're not biologically a Jew only because you are
born Jew.
Born Jew, right? So they accept convert, and so what I think is that the most of these Lemba things is also could be a result of some sort of a mixture, some sort of like founder effect, but not as much as a migration that they thought there was. You know, maybe like a few people that came and had interaction, and then there was this maybe gene that spread. Another thing that they discovered, and this is today's knowledge, right, is that this marker is found among all the Middle Eastern population, not just the Jews. It predates Aaron's time. Arabs have it. Okay, Muslims have it. All right, it's a much older type of marker with regards. So it's not a Jewish specific or a Jerusalem specific marker. It's a lot more spread and common than we think it is. But it's good. They did a study on a Jewish population. They did a study on another population, and they did find something in common between them. How big was the population that started there? You know, did we have a small group that were isolated and then they grow and this marker spread among them? We don't know that. The point is that, and this is important to know, Rick, is there Old World DNA in America today?
Old World meaning European?
Yes, or Middle Eastern or African.
Well, I mean, obviously, since Columbus came, there certainly is.
Okay, why do you say since Columbus?
Because the Spanish and everybody intermarried with the Indians.
Okay, so do you think that we can determine with absolute certainty DNA from Europe that arrived in 1493 versus DNA from Europe that could have arrived in 1491?
No, there would be no.
Okay. Do you think we can determine DNA from 1800 versus DNA from 1000 AD from Europe found in America?
I would think so.
And the answer is not. Do you know the Vikings were in Greenland from 1000 to 1400 AD, 400 years? We have written documentation that they were here. The Icelandic woman actually kept their record of their voyages. We have villages, remains of villages, Viking villages in Greenland that around 1400 they just left. Okay. We also have DNA from Native American in Iceland, okay, which predates Christopher Columbus, that has been there, right? So we know that probably these Vikings took some women to Iceland, and that's where we have their DNA there. But what is the Viking DNA in the Americas?
That's a great question. I have no idea.
Well, I'm sure it's there, but there is not enough time for the post-Columbus DNA to differentiate it from the pre-Columbus DNA. So whenever we find European or Middle Eastern or African DNA in the Americas, even among tribes, native tribes, by default, scientists always say, we think this is post-Columbian admixture. But we don't know. Because the rate of mutation of DNA is not as fast as 100 years or 200 years. In mitochondrial DNA, we actually measure one mutation every 5,000 years. Okay? Mitochondrial DNA, which is one of the studies that has been done. And so the point is, we do find European DNA among native tribes. But we always think that that came with the Spaniards or with the Europeans. In the first 200 years that they were here, they did whatever they wanted, right? And so you go to like a reservation and you test 100 people, you find 60 of them that might have Native American DNA, and then you find 40 that have European DNA. And you think, well, here is the Spaniards mixing with them. They kept culturally their identity, but genetically they got. But we don't know. We don't know when that came. And 2,600 years ago is not enough time to differentiate DNA from Europe, from post-Columbia to pre-Columbian DNA. It took 15,000 years for the DNA to slightly differentiate it from the Asian counterpart. Even today, if you take a DNA test with Ancestry.com or with 23andMe or Family Tree DNA, they put the Asian and Native American together in the same group. Okay? Because they can make the difference. And so if you find European DNA in a native group, you put it with Europe. But you think by default. In fact, if you read any paper by any population scientist, they will not say, this is post-Columbian DNA. They say, most likely is post-Columbian DNA. But we don't know.
So has the Cohen gene, the same gene that's been found in...
It's been found in the Americas.
It has been found in America?
It is, but in fact there was a study that came out not long ago about some Jewish DNA. These are like actually some markers linked to diseases that are typical of Jewish family, and they found them among natives. But they think there are Spaniard Jews or Jews that were living in Spain, that are part of the early colonization process of the America. But we don't know. That's what we think, right? Okay. That is, again, understand this is the default conclusion Okay, is the default conclusion. There have been several population geneticists that say that to assume that the first migration was the one from Beringia 15,000 years ago, and then nothing ever happened until 1492 is a very they use this example. This one guy is like the study of a noble gas. It's like the ideal condition with no any sort of disruption or alternative stories. The reality is like there could have been tens or hundreds of minor migrations in between that have not left a dent. There is one example with some Paleo-Eskimos remains found in the permafrost in Greenland. And these are people that actually arrived 5,000 years ago. And they came from the North Pole across Asia into, they did some sort of island hopping in the, you know, like Eskimos do. And they landed into Greenland. And they had their own civilization. They're called the Sakak people. And they found hair and bones and skin still in the bodies, you know, because of the condition, you know, the permafrost. And they test them, and they are fully Asians. They are not Native Americans, but the carbon dating is 5,000 years ago. They didn't make a major impact. Why? Because the continent was already populated, and so they couldn't make a huge push. That plays a role with how successful you are, you know, in conquering a new place. Why did the Europeans have success over the Native Americans? Was that because the Native Americans were too few to fight back?
No.
Why?
Because guns. Guns and disease.
Guns and disease, mostly disease. The Mexico City was found in the middle of a lake at that time. Remember that? Have you studied that? There were only a little tiny strip of land that would get to the city. And there was no way the Europeans could get into there. But the people were dying in there because of disease, and they could not fight. And so the Europeans had, you know, just a green light to do whatever they wanted. And there was no way that the Europeans are equally given opportunity biologically.
So that's interesting because, you know, you say, you know, the question was how can a smaller population such as the Spaniards dominate a much larger population through technology and disease? Is that a similar sort of thing that may have happened with the early Nephites?
Yeah, but the Europeans came here to conquer and destroy, right? They were very aggressively, you know, approach. So there was a fight, and the technology won. The Nephites did not come here to destroy and conquer, right? They probably find a little place where they could live, right? The Lord led them somewhere, and they start building their own community, and based on love and understanding or sharing technology, they were incorporated, and they incorporated, you know. The population probably could grow, just like very much like, you know, I came to America as an Italian, right? I didn't come here. If I came here with a machine gun, you know, maybe I would have conquered something, but I would have probably been destroyed, right? But I came here as a guy, and I found a wife here, and I have a posterity here, and my children have 50% of Italian DNA, right? If my children live here and get married in the next generation, I will be only 25% of Italian DNA, and then 12% of Italian DNA, and then 6%. And then in 6th generation, there will be no DNA at all in my posterity. I am the Nephite that came to America. Okay. You know, now if you have 50 people that come, and there are 100,000 around, you know, and little by little you build on those relationships. You don't have to assume that everybody were aggressive. The first natives were very friendly to the Spaniards. Christopher Columbus did not run away with the arrow in his back. Okay, there was some trading. The Vikings were trading. And Vikings were not the most polite people, as we know by tradition, but they found an opportunity here to do business, I think, or whatever the reason. And they were here for 400 years, but they were very isolated, right? And there was some mixing, because we know that there is DNA of Native American in Iceland where you would not expect it, so it's very easy to identify that. but you cannot find Vikings DNA in the Americas, which you would expect to find because probably were mostly men that came here, because it's probably mixed with the post-Columbus DNA. And they were here for 400 years. You know, that's more recent time than the Nephites. And yet, where is their genetic contribution? So my point is this. You can look at this as many times as you want, but the answers are, first of all, yes, we have European, Middle Eastern, African, Old World DNA in the Americas. When did it get here? We don't know for sure. We assume it all came after Columbus, but the reality is it could have been here 1,000 or 2,000 years, and we don't know. Number two, it is being established by even known Latter-day Saints population geneticists that have been approached by critics of the church to see if these claims that I'm making or others are true, and they've been asking, you know, what if 50 Phoenicians would come to the Americas and there were hundreds of thousands of millions of people here, would we find Phoenician DNA today? And the answer is no. Okay, these are known Latter-day Saints population geneticists that say that. Could have DNA disappear? Even if we had this coin DNA or others, could have disappeared. But consider this, when the Europeans arrived and they find the natives here, the survival rate that has been established is about 1 of 25 natives. 1 of 25 natives.
One of 25 natives survived after the Spanish?
Yes.
So just 4%?
Is that 4%, 1 out of, no.
No.
Is it? I don't know. Is 1 out of 25, what is the percentage?
Yeah, you multiply by 4, be 4%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 4%. So that is the natives that you have to, the DNA that you have today is the surviving 4% of 1,500 or 1,600, right? Do they represent all the genetic variation that there was before? Entire villages, entire population have been wiped out. It was not random. The Europeans did not go in a village and say, we will kill 24 out of 25 people, all right, randomly. Villages have been completely exterminated. We might never know anything about certain parts. And if the Book of Mormon geography is limited, and if the people in that could have been victim of this wiped out that took place. Okay.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion with Dr. Ugo Perego. In our next conversation, I'll ask him about Rodney Meldrum's claim to have found Middle Eastern DNA in the Americas.
The claim that this particular DNA marker is called X2A, found in North America, is a proof of Book of Mormon remnants or Book of Mormon legacy from the Middle East. It is a good thinking, but it is not funded.
Click here to subscribe, click here for a transcript, and over here you'll see some other videos that we've done here on YouTube. We hope you'll use this as a valuable resource to learn more about Mormon history.